Dzani Naazbaa, a little woman warrior who came home. A story of the Navajo Long Walk. In 1856, a girl given the name of Dzani Yazhi Naazbaa was born on the base of the Black Mesa. Her father named the little woman warrior who came home because he knew that the Navajo had many enemies. Her family called her Naznaba, for short for her birth. Name was sacred. The Znaba's family lived on a land that was surrounded by four sacred mountains. Far from the east were the great La Plata Mountains. To the south was the beautiful Mount Taylor. Near their home in the west were the majestic San Francisco peaks, and in the far north the great mountain Hesperus. And the Dzani grew older, and the mountains kept watch over her family. The Dzani's mother was a quiet and strong woman, and her father was the leader of the Dzani. Dzanaba had two older brothers and who had no sisters. Many relatives lived nearby, so she was never alone. Znabi's happy family childhood ended suddenly when some U.S. troops came to her family's Ogon. Znabi was all alone with the little lambs and goats. Her father had gone to meet with other war leaders, and her mother had left to gather juniper berries. Znaba was afraid of the troops, became so frightened she ran toward the juniper trees in search of her mother. A soldier saw her and grabbed her, putting his hand over her mouth. The Znabi tried to squirm and kick and yell, but it was no use. The soldier tried to tie her up and put her on a horse. Before they had left her home area, the soldiers grabbed several little lambs and tied them up the same way the Znabi was tied. As the Znaba traveled eastward with soldiers, she saw the landscape change many times. The Znaba grew more sad and homesick with every change. She saw the sagebush change into short shrubs, and they came to an area that was covered with orange and many orange mesas. Soon the sagebush returned to Znaba, and Znaba saw many black rocks and that formed tall mesas. As they neared the fort canopy, the mesas changed from black to white, and the valley was covered with green vegetation. It was an area different from any Znaba had ever seen before. If she not had been these soldiers, captives of these soldiers, the Znaba would have thought the valley was beautiful. The Znaba noticed that many Nabiho children huddled in little groups, crying. The children had been captive, just as the Znabi had been, and were being used as bait to capture their parents. It was not long before the Snaba's family was forced to walk to the fort. The Snaba was glad to see her family again, but sad because she did not want to see them held as captives. During their stay at Fort Canby, the Snaba and her family were given one small meal every day. They were very hungry. The Snaba remembered the way the air smelled when her mother cooked blue cornbread and wanted more than anything to eat some of the bread dipped in warm goat's milk. Before long, the soldiers announced that the Nabio prisoners would be forced to walk to Fort Summer in eastern New Mexico territory, which was nearly 450 miles from their homes. "Why are we being forced to walk so far?" cried the Znaba. "My feet and my legs hurt." Mother took the Znaba's hand and held it. "When we find some herbs, we'll rub them on your feet and with them to make you feel better." Now, seeing one of the songs we taught you. It will help the ground move faster under your feet. The journey of Fort Summer was difficult for all Nabil Diznaba. For all the Nabil. Diznaba saw the old people, children, and pregnant women walking, putting one foot in front of the other, not knowing where they were being forced to go. Children and some other people cried as they walked. The children cried because they were frightened. The old ones cried because they did not want to leave their land between the sacred mountains. This Nabil watched as the old Nabil became sick and fell in the back of the line. The soldiers took the feeble behind the hill and shot them. No proper burial was allowed for those who died. The soldiers pushed away the mourning relatives, forcing them to continue walking. As Nazabi and her people walked further and further from behind their homeland, their beloved sacred land faded from the view. When Mount Taylor and her sacred mountain of the south vanished behind her, Nazabi vowed that she would never forget the prayers and songs she had learned through the years. She promised herself that she would raise her children back home on the beautiful Black Mesa. After they walked many days, Desnaba and her family were hungry, tired, and homesick. Their bodies and minds ached. They were almost too tired to walk over a low rise. When they reached it, they saw Fort Summer spread out below them. Desnaba began to cry. Her tears made many marks on her slender, sunburnt face. As prisoners of war, the Nabil tried for springs to plant crops. The land was not kind. The ground was hard. Although the Pecos River ran through the fort, the water was too alkaline and the crops were choked to death. When the crops did grow a little one year, the worms came and destroyed the tender plants. There were also times when it rained so hard that the crops were washed away. When Desnaba saw her father prepare for planting the third year, she said, "Father, our crops will be destroyed again. Why can't we wait until we get back to the Black Mesa before we plant?" "I know the crops will be destroyed," answered father quietly, "but we plant because we cannot let our children and our grandchildren forget our ways. Our children learn many things about the environment through the planting of corn." Because the crops failed, the Znaba's family and the other Nabil had to rely on the troops to provide them with rations. The food given to them was strange to their bodies. Their mother had given dark beans, which she boiled in the bitter river water. No matter how long they boiled the beans, they did not get any softer. The Znaba's mother would throw out the water, and then the family would eat the beans. Later, they learned that the bean was coffee. The other food was no better. The flour was pink and had many dead bugs in it, and the meat the soldiers called bacon was rotten and smelled horrible. The Znaba's mother cooked the bacon anyway because it was the only food they had. There was a time when the Snaba's brother ate the bacon and nearly died. One day the Snaba saw some girls picking through the corn and oats that were put out for soldiers' horses. The Snaba snuck over to the corral, grabbed 2 handfuls of corn, and stuffed them into the sides of her tattered moccasins. The soldier saw her. To punish her, he and some other soldiers took her to a dirty pond and smeared mud all over her face. They laughed as she ran away and spat the mud out of her mouth. It was a humiliating experience. But that evening, as her family ate the corn that was mixed with oats, the Znaba vowed that she would be brave enough to provide her family with decent food again. While the Nabil were prisoners at Fort Summer, Sumner, Dzani reached puberty. Her mother cried softly, bitter tears, as she told Dzani that the Nabil were not to hold the Kinada puberty ceremony outside their sacred land. We can celebrate your Kinada when your time comes again, said Mother. I hope we will not be prisoners then. Nabil always celebrate the first and second one. I will tell my body to wait until we get home, said Naazbaa. We will have it there. This Naba and all of her people could have perished at Fort Sumner, but the children, the clan system, their songs and their prayers helped them survive extremely desperate times. It was the clan system that brought together the Nabil, who were once strangers to one another. The Znaba found many people who were related to her clan, and she, her family, and her new relatives began to provide for one another. Together they gave one another encouragement, courage, and kind words. After 4 long years, the Nabil heard that the important soldier named Sherman was coming to inspect conditions at Fort Sumner. Barboncito, a good friend and a brother of the Naazbaa's father by clan, was selected by the Nabil to speak for them. Naazbaa, the Naazbaa, watched and listened to her father and other leaders discuss with Barboncito that they wanted to tell Sherman. When the men were through talking, Barboncito stood up and looked gently into the eyes of the children. The Naazbaa felt the warmth when her eyes met his. Barboncito persuaded Sherman to let the Nabil return to their land between the sacred mountains. The Treaty of 1868 set aside their land and leased them for imprisonment on June 1st, 1868. Naazbaa followed her mother to a rocky hill near their home. She watched as her mother removed large rocks piled against the side of the hill. As more rocks were removed, Naazbaa could see faded gray designs on a rug that was hidden in a large hole. With great effort, her mother pulled the bundle out and opened to reveal a wedding basket, a small bag of rock salt, some jewelry made of shells and precious stones, and several ears of dried blue corn. We are ready to begin preparations for your Kinada ceremony, she announced. Later that evening, the Naazbaa stood alone at the black base of the mesa. She thought of everything her family, and all the Nabil had endured during the past few years. The Naazbaa lifted her head higher, and she was proud that she was Nabil, proud that her people had survived. Hidwili, their survival give life to their future generations of the people.